Hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican Book Review. Today we're reviewing Civic Republicanism, written in 2002 by Honohan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's a professor at the University College Dublin. And so, this is a really good book about republicanism. And she argues that civic republicanism offers the prospect of an alternative to the extremes of the so-called liberal communitarian debate, with a notion of political community richer than that of mainstream liberalism and less homogenizing and exclusive than nationalism and other forms of communitarianism. This represents an attempt to trace a way in which citizens might realize freedom more effectively than currently achieved. So that's a quote from her book. And she does allude to the end of liberalism a little bit, or a need for an alternative in many places in her book. I'd like to read a quote here, which really explains republicanism very well in a nutshell. Citizens of a state are free if they are independent of external rule and internal tyranny, and so are in some sense self-governing. Republics do not come into being naturally, and without a political structure, there is no basis on which people can form an agreement to live together, so they need a founder or lawgiver to establish their basic institutions. In place of a single sovereign, there is a mixed government in which social forces or institutions of government are balanced against one another to prevent the domination of the state by particular interests and thus to realize the common goods of citizens. Freedom is guaranteed by and compatible with the rule of established laws in place of the will of the ruler. Citizens must be active, accepting duties and performing public service, both military and political. In this, they need to recognize the value of what they share with other citizens. Thus, they must cultivate civic virtue or a commitment to the common good. Okay, I think that's a really good quote, republicanism in a nutshell right there. Let's see. The book is very well organized. It's in two parts. And the first part is really a lot of history. So, really a lot of history from the, Aristotle through Cicero, Machiavelli and Harrington, on down to Rousseau, what's his name? Carl Secundat, de Montesquieu, and the Wollstonecraft and Madison. Some interesting points I wanted to point out here, some interesting details. It talks about material equality. It's not necessarily wealth, but a security and a place of one's own, shielded from the public to be so that people are able to act politically freely, not dominated. And she really lifts that from Hannah Arendt. Now, part two, they talk about the common good and virtue. And these require citizen commitment, civic education, civic religion, which she describes here as a common tradition, history, ceremonies, and festivals. So things like a 4th of July parade. Citizens need to perform civic service, either civil or military, to forge a duty to the common good. Civic virtue is necessary to support institutions. Citizens must have basic material requirements met and not be dominated. Republican autonomy is freedom and participation. So again, with the Republican freedom is non-domination. And so there is that's in opposition to the liberal non-interference as the definition of freedom. So she does talk about justified coercion, and that's where the government should prevent domination, promote autonomy, override distorted preferences, and promote the common good. There was also an interesting argument for the right to privacy based on autonomy and sheltered development rather than spaces completely separate from the public. A secure place for people to emerge as public beings. So this was a really good book. Again, it was written in 2002, so it was pretty close to Pettit's Republicanism, which was written in 97. And so, so it shows that there is a revival of republicanism at the end of the 20th century as a viable alternative to liberalism. So until next time. Before I end. So this is a really good book. You should read it. And you can get it on, read it on EBSCOhost if you have a student account or an educator account. Until next time, long live the Republic.